Hello there and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Nesli and I'm a pattern maker. Today we are sewing changing mats, and honestly, if you have a baby or a toddler, or you like giving handmade gifts to new or expecting parents, this is one of those projects that gets used. Not put in a drawer way, but actually used, like every day. Let me tell you what this little mat can do. It folds up nicely into the cutest compact bundle. You can just toss it into the diaper bag or on your backpack, and when you open it up, you get a clean, padded, comfy surface to change your baby anywhere. And because it closes up nicely, the inside stays clean, even if the outside world has touched it on the surface. There are also a couple of thoughtful details in this design, like a padded area for comfort and a pocket for baby wipes or diapers. For my sample, I didn't use a wipeable fabric inside, but you can totally do that. It's up to you. And the best part is this project is beginner friendly. So if you're new to sewing, you're totally good to go. And if you are more experienced, it's one of those makes. It's quick, but really satisfying. And of course, the pattern is available in my Etsy shop. The link is right below. If you want to sew along with me, go ahead and download it and print your pattern pieces. And that's everything you need to know to get started. Go ahead and print your pattern and get your fabrics, and let's begin sewing.
Start by cutting and preparing all your main fabric pieces, following the pattern exactly. Make sure you pay attention to the grain line, and don't forget to transfer every single notch. Those tiny marks will help you so much later. Then cut your lining pieces in the same way, again transferring all the notches so everything matches perfectly when we begin sewing. Next, prepare your fusible interfacing. I'm using a mid-weight option here because it gives the changing mat a nice structure without making it too stiff. Now cut your wadding or batting using a thickness around 100 to 120 grams per square meter, which gives the mat a soft, fluffy finish. Take your main mat piece and place it wrong side up on your ironing board. Then lay the fusible interfacing on top with the glue side facing the wrong side of the fabric so it bonds properly when you press it. Go ahead and fuse it using your iron. Take your time with this step because the interfacing is what gives the mat its smooth and stable feel. Once that's ready, place the mat piece with the interfacing right side up and position your paper pattern directly on top to mark the quilting lines. And make sure you match the notches. Pin the pattern in a couple of places. Now we're going to transfer our quilting lines with a tracing wheel, which is a simple marking tool that lets you copy pattern lines onto fabric quickly and accurately. Using a tracing wheel, gently roll it along the dashed quilting lines so the stitching guides transfer straight onto your fabric, pressing firmly enough for the tiny teeth to leave dotted marks. Make sure to use a cutting mat underneath to protect your table. If you don't have a tracing wheel at all, just place the paper pattern on the wrong side of your fabric and poke through the dashed lines with pins, marking each point with a heat erasable pen. Now transfer the button loop placement, marking from the paper pattern onto your fabric using your tracing wheel or just by poking through the mark with a pin. If you prefer, you don't have to follow every marked line. You can simply draw one center vertical line and use your quilting foot guide to create evenly spaced quilting lines at whatever distance you like. After that, go over the faint dotted marks with a heat erasable pen to make them clean and easy to follow when quilting. Now let's mark the button loop placement. Lay the lining piece in front of you with the wrong side facing up. Place the wadding on top and align all the edges neatly. Finally, place the main fabric with the interfacing on top, right side up, and again, make sure everything is aligned perfectly. I start by pinning the layers together in several spots to keep the fabric and the wadding from shifting while I sew. I make sure I'm catching all 3 layers at once: the main fabric, the wadding, and the lining. Now, your whole quilt sandwich is ready for stitching. As you can see, both the main fabric and the lining have their right sides facing outward. And now, stitch the quilting lines you've transferred. Start from the vertical center line and then go ahead and make these ones, and then complete the rest of it. When I quilt downward toward myself, I gently guide the fabric toward the outer edge as I sew. This pushes any extra fabric outward, so the whole panel stays flat and the end of each stitched line looks clean. Before starting a new line, I smooth the fabric outward with my hand. After that's done, I sew a quick basting stitch about 2 mm from the edge all the way around the panel. This just keeps the wadding and lining behaving as one piece while I continue working. Now let's make button loop from bias tape. When it's folded like this, it should be 1 cm wide. So this means when you unfold it, it should be 4 cm wide. Any ribbon or cord you like also works as long as the finished length is around 10 cm. I cut a 12 cm piece from my bias tape. I open just one of the long folded edges about 1 cm wide and press it flat. Then I take both short ends and fold them inward by 1 cm one end, while the long edge is still folded and the other while it's open. I press those short folds in place so they stay neat. Next, I fold the long edge I previously opened back into its original position. After pressing it well so the crease looks crisp, I unfold that long edge again. Then I take the other long edge, the one I haven't touched yet, and fold it inward too, this time slightly closer toward the opened edge. Finally, I fold that opened edge inward again and tuck it inside the folded tape so everything is enclosed. I make sure the short folded ends stay tucked in as well, so the raw edges are completely hidden from the outside. I'm securing everything with a pin to keep it in place. Now I have a clean little ribbon strip with no visible raw edges. To finish it, I top stitch close to both long edges to give it that neat belt loop look. Once the strip is done, I fold it in half so that I know the center. And from both sides, using the center point, I create a tiny peak in the middle to give its final shape. And that's how I created my button loop. Now I'm placing the little ribbon loop right on the front side of the mat, just over the marking we transferred earlier. With the pointed end facing the bottom of the mat, I place the bottom of the piece right above the marking. Once I'm happy with the placement, I pin it in place. I make sure it's centered, half of it sits on one side of the quilting line and the other half sits on the other side. Then I sew along the bottom edge of the ribbon, stitching just parallel to that marking line to secure it. Now I'm moving on to the pocket pieces. I take both pocket base pieces and lay them in front of me, making sure all the notches from the paper pattern have been transferred. I turn one piece so the wrong side is facing up and the other so the right side is facing up. Then I place them together with their wrong sides touching, carefully matching all the edges. Once the notches are aligned, I stitch all the way around, about 5 mm in from the edge, joining the two pieces into a single layer. Next, I grab the pocket pieces labeled C. Again, I check that I've transferred all the notches. I place one piece wrong side facing up and the other right side facing up, then place them right sides together, aligning every single edge and notch. I sew along the top curved edge with a 1 cm seam allowance. After sewing, I flip the pieces so the right sides are facing out again and the wrong sides are touching. I press the top edge well so it looks crisp and neat. To create the tunnel for the elastic, I top stitch along the top edge, sewing 1.25 cm in from the edge. This measurement is intentional. It creates the perfect little channel for a 1 cm elastic and makes threading much easier. Now we are going to thread our elastic. Elastic needs to be 1 cm wide. Now I cut my elastic to 22 cm. I use a safety pin or bodkin to thread the elastic through the tunnel, starting at one opening at the top of the pocket. When the elastic comes out the other end, I make sure both ends stay outside the tunnel. I align each elastic end with the little tunnel openings and pin them in place. Then I sew a small stitch close to each tunnel opening. This secures the elastic ends and prevents them from slipping back inside, so the pocket stays functional. Now we're moving on to assembling the pockets. I start by closing the raw edges of the gathered pocket piece, stitching all the way around about 5 mm in from the edge so it turns into a clean, single layer. Then I take the pocket base piece and place the pocket right on top, carefully aligning all the notches. Once everything lines up, I match the top edge of the elastic pocket with the notch at the upper edge of the base piece. That top elastic edge should sit exactly at that notch. I repeat the same thing on the other side as well. Then add a few more pins to hold everything in place. After checking the alignment one more time, I stitch the pocket to the base piece about 5 mm from the edge along all sides. Next, I grab my bias tape. For this pattern, the seam allowance is 1 cm, so the unfolded width of the bias tape should be 4 cm. This will fully enclose the seam later. We're going to place the bias tape along these three edges, with the right and elastic side facing up. and we won't touch this fourth edge for now. I place the raw edge of the bias tape along the raw edge of the pocket, making sure the right side of the tape is touching the right side of pocket piece C. I continue pinning all the way around, making sure the raw edges stay perfectly aligned. When I reach the curved edges, I slow down a bit and ease the bias tape around the curve, gently shaping it so it matches the edge. I'm careful not to stretch it too much and not to leave it loose, just a natural, even curve. I trim the excess bias tape, leaving a little extra at the end. I sew all around with a 1 cm seam allowance. Then I fold the bias tape over the raw edge, covering the seam completely. I pin as I fold to keep everything neat. I insert the needle right at the joint between the bias tape and the fabric and try to bring it out about 2 mm from the edge on the back side of the tape. This way, I can make sure my stitch catches the tape on the back as well. I keep pinning all the way around the edge. When I reach the curved sections, I gently wiggle the bias tape into place with my fingers so it sits smoothly. And if the fabric feels a bit tight around the curve, you can make tiny little clips into the seam allowance to help it relax and fit better. And then I top stitch about 2 mm from the inner edge for a clean finish. I trim off the excess bias tape and cut away any extra bits. Now it's time to attach the pocket to the changing mat. I match the center notch on the bottom of the mat with the top notch of the pocket base piece, and then align the side notches as well. With the elastic side of the pocket facing the lining side of the mat, I make sure everything is centered and aligned, and then I pin the two layers together all along the edge. And I stitch the bottom edge in place with a 5 mm seam allowance. Now, with the pocket flipped like this, we're going to attach the bias tape all around the edges. First, flip the mat so the right side is facing up. Choose any spot along the edge and make a small mark, it really doesn't matter where. Then place 2 more marks, about 3 cm, to the right and left of that point. Leave a 7/8 cm tail and place your first pin exactly on that mark. I pin all the way around with a 1 cm seam allowance. I align the raw edge of the bias tape with the raw edge of the fabric, again making sure the right side of the tape is facing the right side of the lining. Now I pin all the way around, and I'm placing my last pin right at this mark. And now I'm trimming the extra bias tape, leaving another 7/8 cm tail at the end. So my first pin is here, and my last pin is here. I'll start sewing from this point, and stitch all the way around until I reach the ending mark. Now let's join these two ends together. I'm placing a vertical pin right on that first marking we made. I open the edge of the bias tape and bring it over the pin, marking exactly where it meets. Then I take the other end, open that edge as well, and mark it the same way right where it meets the pin. Now I line up those two marked lines, place them on top of each other, and pin them together. And sew a straight line so that the joint seam will sit perfectly on the edge of the mat once it's sewn. With the ends joined, you can see they line up perfectly and sit flush with the edge. Now I trim the excess bias tape, leaving about a 1 cm seam allowance. Then I open those two seam allowances, separate them and pin them flat. And now I sew the remaining gap closed, stitching right along that unsewn section to finish the binding. Now I fold this bias tape in by 1 cm and then fold it over again to cover the raw edge of the mat. Just like we did on the pocket, I fold the bias tape all the way around, enclosing every bit of the raw edge and pinning as I go. As I fold, I pin all around the edge to hold everything neatly in place. And again, just like on the pocket, the pins show on the back, and on the front they sit right in the middle of the tape. The curves can feel a little tricky, but with a bit of gentle wiggle and patience, they fall into place beautifully. Then I sew the bias tape down, stitching about 2 mm from the inner edge of the tape for a clean, finished look. Before we call it finished, there's one last step, sewing the button. The easiest way to find the correct placement is to fold the mat first. Once it's folded neatly, you'll see exactly where the button needs to go, so it lines up perfectly with the button loop. And now let's fold it. I start by flipping the pocket inward. Then I fold both long sides in toward the center until they meet the pocket edges. Next, I fold the bottom up once, just about the height of the pocket. I fold it up one more time the same way. Finally, I close the top flap over everything. This shows us exactly where the button loop lands. I mark a point right above the bias tape, directly over the vertical quilting line that aligns with the loop, and that's where I sew my button. Choose any button shape you like and try to sew it in place without letting your thread show on the lining side. This placement works really well because once you put a diaper inside, the mat will puff up a little and the button will sit at the perfect spot. that's it for our changing mat. I love how practical this design is, especially the elastic pocket at the bottom. It's the perfect little spot for slipping in a diaper, some wet wipes, or anything you want quick access to when you're out and about. And once you fold the mat and button it closed, it becomes super compact, so it fits easily into any bag, even the small ones. I hope you enjoyed sewing along with me. If you make your own mat, I'd love to see it, so feel free to tag me on Instagram. And if you haven't already, check out my other sewing tutorials here on the channel and my sewing patterns on Etsy. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more sewing projects. I've got lots of fun patterns coming your way. See you next time!